Hello and welcome to the Biz Coach Show, hosted by my Biz Coaches and presented by the TLG Group. Our shows focus on giving entrepreneurs the edge they need to succeed. Let's meet our guest for today's episode. Our guest today is Shelby Taloa, or as she's most commonly known, Nurse Sunshine. Shelby is the owner of Hemp Healthy Network. She is an affiliate of the Lumiere Clinic and Holistic Caring Network. She is also American Cannabis Nurses Association certified. Learn more at hemphealthynetwork.com. Well, hey, Shelby, it is so awesome to have you on the show with us. How are you doing today?
I am doing so well. Thank you, gentlemen, for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I've been looking forward to it. I know Eric has, and we're excited for all the topics that we have lined up. And Eric, how are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you, David.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, we've got a great episode lined up, and today we're talking about managing misconceptions. And I think before we dive into our topics and our questions for today, Shelby, I'd love to learn just a little bit more about your story. You mind sharing your journey with us?
I would love to share my journey. So I am Shelby. I have been a registered cannabis nurse independently the last 8 years. My journey started with my opiate addiction and was consuming opiates on a continuous basis all day long. And I knew I needed to change in that recovery modality for pain, for mental health, for physical activity, et cetera, et cetera. And I started to consume cannabis and cannabis products. And I've been able to stay clean the last 8 years from opiates and pharmaceutical medications. I've been able to lose 150 pounds. And with my nursing degree in nursing school, I just said, this is such a passion and purpose. And I see the overwhelming benefits of cannabis consumption. And I just need to share. My story has been able to really support those that are in recovery, minimizing pharmaceutical medications, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why I started.
That is awesome. I love sharing that or love you sharing that. Thank you. And I'm sure that's something that a lot of people can relate to. So thank you for kind of sharing that story with us.
You're welcome. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we kind of look at this, I mean, certainly there's a lot of things we could talk about around cannabis. And I think really today we're going to focus on just some of the misconceptions around it, but also make it translatable for maybe small business owners that are watching this that maybe have similar struggles overcoming misconceptions about their products or their brand or their industry. And so I think that can be a relatable message to a lot of people, even if they're not, in and around cannabis, or maybe it's not necessarily their industry, but it could be something even personally that they're interested in too. So I think to kind of start things off, as you encounter people with varying viewpoints on cannabis, how do you work through their questions, concerns, or maybe even apprehensions that they have about it?
I personally feel it is individually based, and utilizing our time one-on-one is where I am seeing the most support and help. I know in community efforts, it's kind of this free-for-all, and a lot of people aren't understanding to that individual practice. So each of us are different. And that's where I love just bringing in one-to-one consultations and helping to support other healthcare professionals and nurses learn about this. Because with mass production at this time, we are seeing different side effects at bedside. And so it is utilizing patient consumption one-to-one, where is that bridge that we can support them in their use, but also advocating for their safe consumption and how we can help their different modalities. And that's where I find my most purpose.
Awesome. And I guess what would be some advice that you might give to business owners that might struggle with client education or maybe industry misconceptions?
I feel business owners absolutely have the right message with providing cannabis products. It's more utilizing how we can support them after they're starting therapy, and accepting that on different days, a patient may consume this amount and other days they might not need any. So really utilizing that balance is a great component for business owners to put into their educational support system.
And I guess maybe just a follow up on that, I just got to thinking we may have somebody that watches this that maybe they are a cannabis provider, maybe that's their business. How would they start a relationship or working with somebody like you in kind of that medical capacity?
I've been doing independent work, so I've done a lot of promotion with myself and other stores, and I'm just seeing there's a bridge between them being provided a medicinal card. I'm in Arizona right now, so we do have adult use and medical card consumption available for patients and recreational use. I am seeing where there's a gap, right? We're distributing medical cards and not educating the client appropriately. It's more of just handing something out, qualifying conditions with different state laws. That makes a big play in what they qualify for, even if they are allowed a medical card. And I'm seeing where we need to be utilizing that educational component and tracking and monitoring, especially with healthcare professionals. If they're wanting to diminish a dosing on a pharmaceutical medication that they're already on, they need to be monitored for that. If they are wanting to start adding it into their therapy practice, the healthcare professionals should be advocating for them to be utilizing that component in their treatment plan. So we're seeing a break and a bridge with not a healthcare professional component. It's really kind of just a free for all. Everybody go and grab what they want. Well, we still need in our care plans to be monitoring our clientele.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
I was just going to say, one of the things when we first met Shelby, we met at an expo, and I believe that's the first place we met was the expo. And she had mentioned that she was she came by as a potential client and had acknowledged, hey, I've been trying to kind of get a business off the ground to put myself out there as an advocate for this particular solution, right, as a medicinal solution. And she's trying to build a business around this model, and she asked if we could help. And so what was interesting about it is that myself and then Lloyd, as you know, David, he and I were both at the event, and we're like, well, we actually have some questions of our own, right? Yeah. Because one of the things that we talk about as business owners is sustaining focus, right? Ironically, many of our clients, even whether they may or may not use cannabis, but often what happens is they're looking for solutions to try and manage different scenarios, and it could be pain management, or it could be there's different solutions you can take for focus. And I know that was one of the things that in my particular case, I'm like, yeah, I'd love to be able to dial myself in a little bit better and be more focused. And or I'm, as you know, Lloyd, as for me, I've got lots of pain over the years from back pain, knee pain, elbow pain, right, from years of beating myself up in the ring. But the challenge being is that, how do I manage that? What does that look like? And heaven forbid you walk into a cannabis store and don't know what you're asking for, because that's not necessarily a good experience. And so I think, interestingly enough, as we got into more of a conversation with Shelby and she educated us a little bit more, I was just like, oh, wow, that's actually really compelling. I can see where this is a huge opportunity to, kind of really share this insight and information. And ironically, from a corporate perspective, I'll go back to our roots, David, at our previous company. We had a no, what was it? What would you call it? A no.
It was a no substance.
No tolerance.
Yeah.
It was a no tolerance policy. So even though we operated in states where it was a medicinal, medicinal was acceptable, and we had a no tolerance policy. So we were actually, we were challenged with how do you manage that And I'm kind of curious, Shelby, if you have some thoughts on that, because we were in an organization that was like, yeah, we don't tolerate that use because it's not considered acceptable. Yet we were in states where it was acceptable. And more importantly, there were a number of people that felt it was important for them.
Yeah.
I would just advise, thank you for saying just that tolerance, because we are seeing different laws changing at this current time, where a lot of people are not only using it for pain management, but a lot of PTSD and trauma. As a healthcare professional, I have definitely struggled and had my breakdowns, we can call them. I feel that it really is a self-preservation tool to support in the things that we struggle with. A lot of that education is coming across the board. So we are seeing laws change. As long as consumption is not done on property or during working hours, I feel it's up to the individual. But again, we go into those no tolerance and of course, drug screening. Just a fun fact, the reason why normally that THC stays in one system for 30 days is because the liver is utilizing that plant material and it's dispersing what we need to help with that pain, inflammation, the blood flow. It's going to different receptors that are in our body. So that's the key reason why if somebody does consume cannabis, the THC part, it does stay in your system for up to 30 days if you're not flushing appropriately. I definitely advocate for the cannabinoid portion, like CBD and CBG, CBN. There's tons of different realms with the cannabinoids, and that is more like a daily vitamin, and everybody should be having that. So that's where it goes to the tolerance. I would just say for any business owner, right? It's really going to be to them, but laws are changing. And that's really where we come in and bridge this advocacy.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, one of the things Eric and I talk about on many of our episodes is it's so important to stay up to date with changes, whether that's, technology or artificial intelligence. But I also think, changes in medicine, in science and research, and, a policy that may have made sense, 10 years ago may not make sense today, and evaluating, something like cannabis or CBD and how that can play a role in the health and wellness of employees, where, mental health is an increasing focus and there's positive impacts there. So I think it's important for people to maybe, again, battle through that misconception, which is what this episode's all about. And think about, is my policy or is my stance on this evolving with the research and the medical community?
And just to share, we will start seeing insurance companies covering CBD and CBN, all these cannabis products, because if anything, we don't have to over exaggerate of what cannabis is doing, but the overall message is quality of life. And so at this time, I've been sharing with an assisted living facility and helping to put in a program to their patients, because we're seeing that a patient may use on the outside or family has questions, and then they need transition into an assisted living facility or a nursing home, those kind of things. They don't have that support to bridge. They have questions if they're able to consume. So it's utilizing all of these. We're seeing that these being implemented into facilities also diminishes caregiver stress out and out that we all can go through as we are just in that caregiving position, especially with the medication management, consistently asking for their dose or things of that nature. We're seeing that it decrease. So it's helping to support patients overall and minimize burnout of caregivers.
Interesting. I know we have a client that works in the ABA, for children with dang it, what is the term I want to use? Lloyd's son, David.
Autism.
Yeah.
Autism. Thank you very much. Autism. Yes. And they were talking about the level of burnout for the clinicians that work with these children, right? And because it's such a high stress environment all the time, the amount of burnout that goes through, and we have, I won't call it an epidemic, but we certainly have a alarmingly increasing number of children that are getting diagnosed with autism. And with the number of children that right now, there's literally a facility here in the state of Arizona. Actually, it's a regional facility. They've actually shut down their services because they can't staff. They can't keep up with the requirements, and so they've actually shut down their operation. I think they're in 9 states or something like that. So the demand's increasing, and they can't keep up with it. And the clinicians, because they can't keep people in the field because of the level of burnout and things like that. So it's becoming more and more of a challenge. It's interesting as you talk about work burnout, and I think about how cannabis can play a role in that effective if it's managed effectively, right? I mean, there's something to be said for somebody managing a state versus somebody who's just sitting around getting high and hanging out on the sofa all day. Right?
Yes.
But that said, right, there's a lot to be said with that. And ironically, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But I also want to make sure that we don't miss the opportunity to talk about some of the work. You shared with me some of the studies when it comes to brain activity and how this can help clients that have brain injuries.
Absolutely. So we are seeing a lot of it utilized. And just to share, there's been a patent on cannabis for a long time. And it states in that patent that it assists with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, et cetera, et cetera. So what we're never taught especially with me, with my nursing studies, I was never taught about the largest self-regulatory system. This is known as the endocannabinoid system. So we have already, every mammal has brain receptors, gut receptors, there's skin receptors, and everything is functioning off of this cannabis. That's what helps with our neuroactivity, our GI movement, pain decreasing. So we notice over history that hemp is a huge one that's been taken out of our ecosystem. And hemp is the largest detoxifier in a lot of things, very sustainable, hemp homes, fabric, et cetera, et cetera. So we've noticed that it's taken out of our ecosystem, that we've seen an increase in disease processes we've never even heard of. So a great thing that I utilize in my education is even the CBD and the CBN, all of those extras act as a neuroprotectant. So let's say we have a patient with Alzheimer's, and we're starting to see a lot that there is burnout also with Alzheimer's patients, a lot of confusion, anxiety, hallucinations, those type of things. And normally, normally we're using Ativan as an intervention. Well, if you look at the patient, it sends them into a complete opposite response that you're wanting them to help calm down. So we're noticing that if we're just able to utilize a minimal bit of cannabis, sometimes that's with the THC part and the CBD, the full plant material, then we're noticing that their anxiety is decreasing, some of their cognitive functions coming back where they can smile, they're having good memories come about, their utilization, motor skills, those type of things. But with overall things, we have the most abundant receptors in our brain. So someone with traumatic brain injury, I know for myself, I struggle with chronic trauma. Those are just the circumstances that I've accumulated overall in my body. So sometimes my thought pattern is even off, but I notice that the CBD helps me to calm down, and it helps with that neuroactivity so I can get a thought together, so I can create something, have the energy to utilize those things, all types of different circumstances. But seizure activity is another one. That electrical component that cannabis is providing, it helps to link and decrease seizure activity. So we're already prescribing synthetic cannabinoids to patients. And that can be kind of scary. It's just monitoring exactly what the patient needs in that individual process.
Wow. I appreciate you sharing that. I know that's those studies and that information that you shared with me in the past. It amazes me. My first experience with it from a medicinal perspective was my I mentioned before, my stepmother who had breast cancer, and that's how she was managing the chemo treatment and her body's responses to chemo treatment. Basically, keeping food down and things like that. That was. But even that, I mean, I would say that my parents were absolutely against the use of cannabis at all levels, right? And all of a sudden, immediately, something like that, life-changing, comes up, and immediately, you're starting to think about, well, all right, well, what else could help me with the situation? And all of a sudden, you start thinking about what other things you're open to, and it's amazing how much people will change their perspective when things are different. And so, to David's point, with this session, we really want to talk about how that, the impact of people, misunderstandings and things like that kind of go with something like cannabis, and particularly because it's been kind of hush hush for so long that a lot of people aren't aware of some of the information you're sharing with us. Appreciate you doing that.
Absolutely. We are seeing a lot of patients with cannabis and cancer comfort measures. It helps to decrease the nauseousness if they're going into chemotherapy. And that's really where we get to support our patients and be like, I appreciate you coming in and utilizing what you need to do to feel comfort during this process. I can't give any medical claims, but there's a lot of information and research that is out there. It's going into just providing an alkaline basis in our body, where usually cancer is started with acidic environments.
Right.
That's when it starts to increase. The sugars, if we're a sugar addict, that's linking to this, those type of things. That's normally the predeterminator of cancer. So older generation, I really appreciate, because they're starting to become a lot more open, because once they get to a point of just like, I'm going to utilize anything to help me and have this better quality of life. It's been a change in their perspectives. And I feel like, especially that conditioning that they've all been raised in, there's just a different perception, and they want to learn and they want to know more.
Right.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot of geriatric patients, especially with the pain and the medications, even in hospice and palliative care. And it's a beautiful process to just give them comfort and quality of during their transition time. So I know that's a big one that's coming also. And patients and families have questions. So we might as well be utilizing it and advocating it for in their treatment plan.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So my mind goes to, as we're talking about, how the industry, how the research, how even the attitude towards cannabis has evolved. I also think about kind of the business aspect of this, and in some states, the legalization of medicinal or recreational cannabis is almost like a gold rush of people jumping in to capitalize on that industry, which can be good or bad, right? And especially if it's not used as the way you've described it. So I'm curious, how have you been able to successfully navigate those changes in the cannabis industry over the last 5 to 10 years?
I will be in my honesty. I have seen that mass production is not the best production. It is actually pretty scary out there. Some of the things that the cannabis industry is doing. I advocate absolutely for knowing your product, knowing where it's being grown, knowing what it's being tested with, and utilizing it appropriately. So let's say a patient, even some of the testing that's being done, it is kind of that free money market, and that's the next boom, and people just want to jump on it and make it the next dollar, but that is what I have seen doing this the last 8 years is not the safest, and it's not the most productive. Some of the best growers and best medicine I've ever had is a lot of people doing it in their home. And especially with the dispensaries, it's kind of this high vibing, and I've been trying to link with a lot of them and just advocate, we are seeing, because of these products on the shelf, patients coming into hospital settings and needing pharmaceutical intervention because they're not being educated appropriately. And the high amounts of THC products that are available to those consumers, it's not always the best. So that's what I've seen, and that's really why I do a lot of independent work and advocate and educate appropriately. Just go low and slow when starting cannabis, because we are seeing different side effects with pharmaceutical intervention in the hospitals. That's just what I know. And I've been doing this a long time. Especially with like autoimmune patients, if they have a plant that has been grown and there's a fungus on there, that can deter their autoimmune disease and send them into a not good, healthy little bout. So it's just awareness. It's knowing who's growing it, what's in their product, what's in their testing, checking all of those things.
Yeah, which, I mean, kind of a not necessarily a new industry, but when an industry explodes like that, it's very important to, make sure you're doing your research. And I mean, whether it's cannabis or anything else, right? Look at your suppliers, look at the processes that are being used, understand the product and all of that. So I think, whether it's cannabis or not, I think those are parallels and things that any owner could take from that. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah. And one of the things I'd share with that, David, that we talked about with Shelby early on was, I kind of relate it to the early days of the wireless industry when we first started selling cell phones, right? It was, it does this and this, right? It texts, and actually before it even texts, it just was making and receiving phone calls. And then you could text, and then you could, it evolved into, now we can get on the internet. Now you can do this on it. Now there's all these apps, and it started evolving. And what was happening was, if you remember, some of our sales team was not up to par with some of the technological advances. And so consequently, clients may have not gotten during the sales process, the entire picture of what they were signing up for when they got a contract with one of the services or something like that. And they're like, well, I didn't know my phone could do this, or I didn't know it would work this way or whatever, because we weren't, at the time, we weren't putting as much emphasis on that. As that evolved, as the technology, and part of it was because to your point, David, the technology came at us so fast that sometimes it was hard to keep up with it, right? And I think that we're seeing, similarly, and this is some of the conversation we had with Shelby as we brought her in as a client. Part of this is all of a sudden they opened the floodgates and said, not just medicinal, but in addition to that, oh, look, we're going to allow you to do recreational as well. And they started lighting up state after state to, for what it's worth, to generate tax dollars. And the challenge became, now we're flooding the market with a product and there's a lot of people that would like to or have access to for the first time, and they're not getting the education. The people, I mean, just even the salespeople that are in, what do they call them again, Shelby?
Bud tenders.
Bud tenders, yeah. So the bud tenders that are in the facilities may or may not be the best people to educate the client on what the right product to buy is. And so that's why Shelby's role is so valuable, because she can take somebody who doesn't understand, right, and kind of help them appreciate, this is what you can expect from this particular product, and this is the result that you could anticipate, and the appropriate dosage, as you mentioned earlier, right? I think that that's really important, because as these cannabis facilities begin to open, one of the challenges that we're going to continue to see, and I say begin to, they've already really kind of hit the market pretty hard, but they'll continue to scale up. And one of the challenges that we're going to see very likely is that as more and more, if the Fed opens the doors and allows everybody to go, all states to go recreational, I think that it's kind of like, David, in the old days with the wireless. So it's like all of a sudden everybody's out there trying to sell a cell phone and nobody knows how to use one.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And consequently, the end user is the one that's going to experience the worst, have the worst experience, because they're not going to be educated effectively.
Yeah. Saturation without education is very dangerous.
Totally.
Yes.
And can I also express, so the last 3 years I've been educating about psychedelic and non-psychedelic mushroom therapy, and also the cannabis industry is on that. So we need to be utilizing appropriate education in that arena. Safety is a huge thing. People are just going to go for that free for all, just like, it's happened with cannabis, and it's not the safest for everybody to not know what they're doing. So that's another one I've been educating about, and the cannabis industry you'll see it'll start being taken over in that arena also. So that's already begun.
Interesting.
Shelby, from a business perspective, what percentage of the cannabis distribution out there, ballpark approximately percentage wise, is bigger corporate versus the smaller independent growers and distributors at this point?
I would say the big corporate definitely has a hold on the marketplace. Already. There's already, small dispensaries. So this is kind of how it works in our system here in Arizona, is everybody puts into a lottery. You put money up front to even have a dispensary space, to open up a store, to go into those things. Well, there's names that are already available, so they get the market. That's just kind of how it works. There are the big wigs that are also taking over the smaller wigs, buying them out, so that they can do that mass production, and that's just kind of how it is at this time also.
Right. Yeah. And in the retail distribution, the economy of scale is a key factor. So in any retail environment, right? I mean, when you have more stores to spread costs over, whether it's production costs, distribution costs, just managing retail facilities. I mean, there's the added disadvantage of a retail facility where, if the city all of a sudden decides to tear up the road in front of your distribution point, your retail store or whatever, there's very little you can typically do about that. And so you take a shot. So in retail, it's really about economy of the scale. The more vast I can make my distribution, the more different distribution points that I can accumulate and do so intelligently, financially, it makes sense. The small independent one-off, that usually can be a good business operation, but they're also not prepared for the ebbs and flows of the economy. I mean, the economy takes a hit for some reason. All of a sudden, something like this, there's if it's not a necessity, people won't buy it. And so what will happen is the small independent business owner is the one that falls by the wayside. So there's something to be said for the economy of scale of larger companies having controlling more of that, but it's never good when there's I won't say a monopoly, but when it gets to that point where there's only a handful of, to your point, certain companies that have the opportunity to even open, because now it's limiting the opportunity. The opportunity to get into the business, but then two, it controls who and what people have access to.
It's true.
Yeah, so it's a kind of a balance between the two, but.
Yeah, I'd say I may have misunderstood this, Shelby, but just to confirm, the kind of unique model there is, are you saying that growers are often the ones also running the retail space? So unlike a lot of traditional businesses, you have all these wholesalers and the retailer can kind of pick where they're getting the product from. It sounds like oftentimes the retailer and the grower are one and the same. Is that accurate?
I would say it's dependent on who they're growing with, if they're sustaining that production. We are noticing a lot, especially with the hemp, they're burning the plant material because there's just no investor to go in and utilize this plant material. which is kind of the disappointing thing, because I know that we could be utilizing hemp for detoxifying the soil, for building homes, and those kind of things we're wanting investors to understand. But it's always iffy if an investor comes in and, those type of things, because it's labeled the cannabis industry. But there's so much that we could be doing to utilize this plant in great things. And hopefully that message will one day be able to start a lot of good projects and help to just refurbish the earth just with hemp alone.
We have a lot of entrepreneurial folks that listen to the show, so it sounds like maybe there's an opportunity there to create a secondary market for hemp discard and things like that. So you never know. You may have sparked a new business idea right there.
I hope so. We will talk.
Awesome. Well, I think just while we're talking about it, one of the things that we discuss with a lot of business owners, and I think probably even more so in the line of work that you're in, where you're working with clients and working through probably some complex pain management, things like that. How do you kind of balance the demands of that medical side of what you do versus kind of the business side of what you do, and how do you keep those two things in balance?
Oh, the balance is difficult. I will be honest. I have definitely, I've been working the last 4 years all in whatever has been going on. And we are just seeing that healthcare workers are at a complete burnout. And so if you know a healthcare worker, thank them today for what they're doing. I've noticed that a lot, the more I open up about it, healthcare workers are consuming cannabis to help with their energy and help with their trauma and help with their anxiety, depression. All of those things can go under treatment plans of self. We are also seeing a lot of increase where behavior health and mental health is a big thing at this time. And yeah, I would definitely say the balance. I've had to just kind of reiterate my purpose, and I find so much more joy in doing this part of my nursing career, and bedside's difficult. So just think a healthcare worker today, if you know one. Send them for a massage or a good meal or something of the sort, because we're tired. It's been a lot. Absolutely.
Well, speaking of healthcare workers, as I understand it, a big part of your mission and what you focus on, daily, weekly, monthly, is growing that network of healthcare professionals. So any advice as you've kind of started growing that network that you might give to other business owners that maybe struggle to build a network of their own?
I would say keep going. Find somebody that is really useful. I know I have promoted multiple businesses on my free dime, offer them a great package to come into their services. I've been reiterating this with the assisted living facility. I've been advocating for them for the last year to bring this in, and you will watch census go up because the patients in the community will have that support. So link with somebody that is of independence and well stature and educationally great in all the things that they do. We are just as much available as the next person, and offer them a great package. They will start to really grow your business and be good things.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we've talked a lot about changes and staying informed. So I'm curious, how do you stay up to date on maybe legal or regulatory changes that might impact your business or even medical practice that you do?
So I stay a lot with the American Cannabis Nursing Association. That is recognized by the American Nursing Association as a specialty. I also have grouped with other networks that there are cannabis nurses, and we are changing the paradigm of healthcare. We are utilizing our education and our platforms to support other nurses and healthcare professionals, that they can know more about how to implement this into their patient care, and just keep an open mind, because If anything, we are the ones to advocate for our patients of quality of life and sovereignty. Every individual will have that different perspective, but if we can bridge that gap and just say, okay, here we are to help support you, and here we will do our best to educate and advocate for you and help you put that into your treatment plan. That opens up, so many opportunities for healthcare providers to really sustain themselves and their businesses also.
Awesome. Well, I think just maybe one more question that's top of mind for me, and then Eric may have a few. But I think just in general, any lessons that you've learned along the way through this journey that you think would benefit other small business owners?
I know for as long as I've been doing this, I have definitely had circumstances where I've come into businesses and really have grown them and made them some great offerings and with my services, and treat us well. There's just a component that a registered cannabis nurse is going to hold and sustain, that it steers the market to allow open, healthier modalities. I would say stay in the independence is what I absolutely love doing. I have definitely seen things transition over the last 8 years I've been doing this. I've been put down. I have failed papers in nursing school because I had done it on cannabis and mental health, and I just kept pushing. Those are my fighting factors, the things that I've been told to just get out and follow my purpose. Awesome. And here we are. A lot of people are open to these discussions, and that's what I'm really, really grateful for.
Awesome. Well, Eric, anything that you want to add before I jump to some key points and we wrap up for today?
Nothing necessarily to ask. I just, as our relationship with Shelby continues to evolve and we look at her mission and her vision and what she wants to accomplish, we're excited about partnering with her. And one of the things that I think that's when you truly when you're very passionate about your mission, David, as you well know, it shines through. And when in my conversations with Shelby, when I recognize, she's had some less than desirable experiences as a business owner trying to build her business in this field, and for a number of reasons, not the least of which is an unregulated environment where there's been a lot of growth and a lot of opportunity and an opportunity or opportunities to take advantage of people. It's always helpful to, stay true to your guns, as you'd mentioned. It's like you stay true to your passion and your mission, but also, seek the support that you need to help you where you're not comfortable. And, that's one of the things that Shelby did. She reached out to us and said, "Hey, I've had some experiences. They were less than desirable. I'd love to be able to do this. I believe in what I'm doing. Can you help guide me?" And I think the one thing that I'm actually overly impressed with Shelby is her continued focus on understanding not just what's gone on to this point, but she continues to do her research and stay top of mind. I mean, it was her insight into some of the different statistics and the amount of research that's been done and all that. It just shines through in her passion. There's a lot of people out there that own businesses that have a fraction of the passion that she demonstrates for what she's doing. And I think that reminds me of why I do what I do, because I want to help people fulfill their missions. And that's one of the opportunities that I think exists out there is in an environment like this, with an industry like this that's growing. It's not being as regulated as it, and not that it necessarily needs to be regulated, but that the openness of the way it was launched and the way it continues to be rolled out, it creates too many opportunities for people to be taken advantage of, whether that's the consumer or somebody within the industry. But you need to make sure that you do your due diligence and find the opportunity to partner with the right people so that you can, carve out your niche, so to speak, and continue to foster and develop your mission.
I super appreciate that, Eric. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, hey, let me share a couple key points, things that I kind of took from our conversation that I think really any small business owner watching this, whether they're, in the cannabis industry or never even thought about it before, that I think they can take from our conversation. I think first and foremost is it's important to regularly challenge your own misconceptions, whether that's, cannabis as we talked about today or other things with like technology that maybe you're resistant to, but it's time to kind of shift that perspective and think about it a different way. Also, if you're in an industry or maybe your business is facing maybe some challenges due to misconceptions, create a plan and make sure that you are working to overcome those misconceptions, whether it's your business's products, a service that you offer, or the industry as a whole. Also, very specifically, I think we took from this, evaluate your company's cannabis policy and is it evolving with changes in research and legality and all those sorts of things. We also talked about being cautious and aware of emerging industries, products, and processes. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. And I think you both have discussed, people can get taken advantage of and hurt in that process. So always be cautious if there's a new industry. Yes, there's an opportunity, but there's usually an element of risk involved for both the business owner and the consumer when that occurs. And then we talked about, it's important to ensure your employees are well informed and well trained to make effective recommendations, regardless of what product you sell. And then often misconceptions are best managed one-to-one and also through community partnerships. And Shelby, I think you've really kind of sold me on that. So appreciate you sharing some of your tactics there. Also, be patient and persistent in your networking efforts. Sounds like sometimes it can take, months to years for that relationship to finally blossom. So appreciate you sharing that. Stay connected with professional associations. Great way to stay informed of changes. So I think great advice there. And then last, but certainly not least, is staying focused on your purpose and your mission. So just a couple of key points again for our audience out there that I think anybody can relate to, regardless of what industry they're in. So Shelby, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I know I enjoyed it.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I enjoyed sharing everything. So thank you.
Absolutely. Eric, always good to hang out with you. Thanks for hopping on with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
Awesome. And thank you out there for watching or listening. We invite you to subscribe. And if you already subscribed, hit the bell notification so you don't miss future episodes with great guests just like Shelby. So with that, we'll catch you on the next episode of the Biz Coach Show.